Thank Hashem, we're able to learn every day. This is the last blot of Seder Mayed, Mesechtas Chagigah, last Mesechta of Seder Mayed. Yeah. Okay. Schus of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash before Shlema for everyone that needs. Our brethren in the Ukraine should be safe. We're going to start Chavav Amid Beis right after the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that after the Yom Tovim, they would have to purify the Azara, because over the Yom Tovim they considered everyone tar. But after the Yom Tovim, they did not consider everyone tar, so they would have to go through and tovel everything. They said, be careful not to touch the table, because the shulchan had the showbread on it, and if they would have to purify that, then they would have to take the showbread off, and the showbread was there constantly. So that would mess up the way the lechem apanim, the showbread was. Then we mentioned in the Mishnah that they always had replacement utensils for everything, just in case something became tamei. And we mentioned also the mizbeach hazav, the mizbeach hanacheshes. According to Rabbi Eliezer, they don't become tamei because they're the ground. They're compared to the ground. Mizbeach adama, they're called mizbach adama, and the Chacham say because they're covered. We'll see in the Gemara what that means. Okay, the Gemara starts Tana. Start in the Brisa. Hizaru shemetiga b'shulchan u'b'menorah. Brisa says that when they would tell him, be careful, don't touch the table, they actually said, be careful, don't touch the table and don't touch the menorah either. You don't want the menorah to become contaminated, because the menorah also has the candles on it that are burning constantly. It says, Vitana didan my time alaitani menorah. How come the author of our Mishnah skipped that? He just said, don't touch the table, which has the showbread on it. It says, well, shulchan ksiv beit tamid, menorah like ksiv beit tamid. It actually doesn't say that the candles, the lamps are burning on the menorah constantly. It says that they burn from evening to morning. Very interesting. The idach. So why does the Brisa say it? That be careful. Well, it says kivan the ksiv as a menorah neichach hashulchan command the ksiv beit tamid dami. It says that the menorah was opposite the shulchan, which means that as long as the shulchan is there, the menorah needs to be there. Which means that we don't want to have to end up taking away the menorah. As long as the menorah is there, the shulchan is there. So the shulchan is always there. And so we want the menorah to always be there also and not to become contaminated. Even though you can just put it in the mikveh. But no, because the shulchan has to be there always, because the shulchan is tamid, the tamid means constant. So to the menorah. Taisus over here asks an interesting question. He says, but what about that ner maravi that was always burning? Yeah. I guess the answer is that was something miraculous. That wasn't part of the structure of the mitzvah. Yeah. Okay, the Gemara has a question now. Oh, first we say, so why does the other opinion say that you don't worry about the menorah? It's only the shulchan that there's an issue if they always have to be there at the same time. It says that pasuk that says that the menorah is opposite the shulchan, that's not telling you that the shulchan is there the whole time, therefore menorah is there the whole time. It's just telling you the position of it in the room. Okay. The Gemara has a question. We said that there's a concern you may touch the table, make it tamid. So they tell you, be careful. He says, what's the problem? The rule is like this. The only things that become tamei are things that are similar to a sack. That's a Hebrew word for sack. Anything that could be moved, whether it's a bag that could be moved whether it's full or empty. However, anything that's stationary, that's wood, a wooden stationary box, a closet, let's say, a chest that's not moved when it's full, I think that means like 40 saw. So that doesn't become tummy. So we're saying that because the wooden table is a table that's just there resting, it's not meant to move around. It's not like a sack. Shouldn't become tummy either way. So why are they telling them, watch out, don't make it tummy? It's a clay it's asil. My timer. What's the reason that a clay it's asil, a wooden vessel that's stationary? Why? What's the reason that it doesn't become tummy? We say dumya the sack bina needs to be similar to a sack. Sack is a sack. Ma sack metaltal malivarika, and just like a sack, you can carry it whether it's full or whether it's empty. That's the point of it. You put things in it, you can carry it around. Afkal metaltal malivarika, and also everything that becomes tummy has to be able to be movable, whether it's full or empty. Okay. The Gemara says, well, I'll tell you the answer. You want to know why the table becomes tamei, even though it's stationary? The answer is because it's not stationary. Hainami metaltal malivarekanu. This is actually moved around. The shulchan, the table that's in the heichal, is actually moved around. When do they move it? Kid Rish Lakish. It's like Rish Lakish says. Damar Rish Lakish, my deksiv. Rish Lakish says, what's the meaning of the verse? Ala shulchan atar. On the table that's tar, that's pure. Why do you have to say the table that's pure? Michlal shu tameh. When you're describing it as pure, that means that it could have become tameh, but it didn't. That's why you had to use that description, that it's tar. How could it become tameh anyway? It's stationary. So we asked the question again. The same question, but we're just quoting. The reason why we're quoting the question again is because we're looking for the answer. The answer is Ela Malamed. This teaches us they would actually lift up the table and show it off with the bread to the people that came to visit. And they would say like this, look at how much you're beloved in front of Hashem. The way the bread is removed from the table, it's as fresh as it is when they put it on. Yeah, this is not because, the sourdough loaves that they feel the same a week later. It's not because of that. That's actually, it wasn't even chametz. It was matzah. I think the lechem apanu, right? Lechem apanu. I don't remember. But the lechem apanu chametz. What does it say? Okay, whatever the case is, they were hot. That's the idea. They were warm. Take a look at this. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, there was a great miracle with the showbread. The way it was arranged, that's how it was when you took it off. It was the same heat, the same temperature. You put it on, it was, just right out of the oven. A week later, they took it off. It was still the same heat, the same temperature. It says to put hot bread on the day that it was taken. Okay. We have an answer. Why do they have to be careful with the table? They have to be careful with the table because the table was moved. It wasn't a stationary table. If it's a table that's moved, why did they move it? To show the bread. But once it's moved, then it becomes tummy. Just like a sack becomes tummy. So they had to be careful. Okay, now the Gemara says, why do we have to go through this? The reason why, what our issue was we thought it was stationary. In a keli that's stationary, a wooden keli, a wooden vessel that's stationary doesn't become tummy. The Gemara says, 1 second. It's not a wooden keli. It's covered in gold. What's the main thing? The main thing is the coating, and the main thing is what's underneath. So let's take a look. It says, the Hatanan, it was taught in a Mishnah, Hashulchan va'adulfiki. A table in a dulfiki is a table that came from Delphi, the Greek city, Delphi. And it was probably like a tripod. You could fold it up. What was Delphi was like some Avodah Zarah over there. And like anyway, like the rest of the place. So, but this it's just a table. Shenifchasu, oishachipim b'shayish. A table should become tamei. It's a table. If it's a small table, it should become tamei. If it's a stationary table, then it doesn't become tamei. But if it's a small table, which that's what these things are, these little like small tables. So if they're worn out, so they're covered with marble. The rule with marble is that marble is a stone, and stone kalim don't become tamei. Stone utensils don't become tamei. So if it's covered in marble, then it's tamei. If the covering of it was not a perfect covering, you put a piece of marble over the table, but you left an area where you can still put cups, maybe like a little circle or something. You can still put cup holders. So it's not considered a perfect covering, and it's not considered a stone utensil, and therefore it's still tamei because it was a table before, and you didn't take that away because you didn't cover it perfectly. It can't just be that it can hold cups in order for it not to become in order for it to be tamei. It has to also hold slices of bread. It has to be still a table, used as a table without the covering. Okay, what are we seeing? That in order to remove it from being a table, we put a stone covering on it, and now it's not considered a keli. If we put a metal covering on it, then it would clearly become, if for leniency, we say that it won't become a keli, so l'chumra, for sure it would become a keli, right? We're always going to be strict with tumah. So if we remove it from being a keli to when we put a stone on it, if we would put metal on it, then it would be a keli, even if it's asir lenachas, even if it's stationary. That's what we're trying to get out. What type of stationary keli is not tamei? Wooden. But a metal stationary keli would be tamei. So because it's covered in metal, it's covered in gold, it should be tamei. Gemara says, well, maybe we can get out of this as well. How are we going to do that? No, we're asking. We said that it does become tamei. But the reason why it becomes tamei is because we lift it up and move it around and show the people. So maybe we have another pshat. Maybe the reason why it becomes tamei is because of the metal that's covering it. It says, maybe, when would we say that the metal coating, the golden coating, is considered that the whole keli is metal, the whole keli is gold? That's only if it would be a cheap wood. But this is atzi shitim, this is acacia wood. Yeah, this is fancy wood. So the giraffes eat and that doesn't mean anything. But it's apparently an important wood. So we'll say that even though it has a golden coating on it, but it's still considered wood because this is an expensive wood. Says, well, maybe. Rish Lakish actually says this. He says, when do we say that we consider it to be marble in that Mishnah? If you covered it with marble, that's only if you use this achsalgim wood. So I don't know what type of wood it is. Do they give any translation of achsalgim? It's a cheap wood. Today would be pine, right? Some cheap wood. However, if it's clay mesamim, if it's this expensive wood, I don't know what types of woods are expensive. I don't know, mahogany, something fancy wood.
There's lots of expensive wood.
It's not expensive.
Yeah, there's lots of expensive.
Oh, there's lots of expensive. So, yeah. So that would be not batal. So then we have a teretz. You know why we didn't discuss the coating? Because we're using an expensive wood. So the coating doesn't matter. There's a machlekes here, Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, that says even if you're using expensive wood, the coating over it is more important. And so if that's the case, then we're dealing with a metal utensil here because it's coated in gold. So why do you have to tell me that the reason why it's tummy is because you move it around? I have a better pshat why it's tummy. The reason why it's tummy is because it's coated in metal. Maybe we'll say there's differences in how it's coated. You can put a coating over it, but not always is the coating nailed down to the thing. Could be it's just like a plate that's put over it, and it doesn't mean that it's nailed in. It's tacked in. Could be that it's like removable coating. Maybe that could change what's going on over here. The only thing is, but this was actually a question which we have an answer to. Rish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, it says, is this discussion here when the coating is covering it, or when the coating is tacked in, or when the coating is not tacked in? Is the coating covering the lip, or is the coating even if it's not covering the lip? The rim, you can get over the side. It's like a perfect coat. Rabbi Yochanan responded, all of that doesn't matter. It's anyways considered coated. And if it's coated, then it should become tamei. If it's metal, if it's stone, then it doesn't become tamei. Where it says Alashani Shulchan derachman karya eitz. You know why we had to go through the story about lifting it up and showing it to the people to tell me that it's not a stationary keli? That's because the Torah calls the Shulchan eitz, calls it wood. The Ksiv, quote a pasuk in Yecheskel, HaMizbeach eitz sholish amas skayvei. The wooden mizbeach is 3 amas high, but orka shteim amas, and it's wide 2 amas. There's a problem with this. It's not actually the Shulchan. It's not actually the mizbeach. This is part of the pasuk is referring to the Shulchan. The Mektzais of light, and its corners are also wood, but arkai and its length, its edges and its length. The kirais of eitz, and its corners are wood. By Yadaber Elai, and he spoke to me. He said to me, Hashem, this is the table that's before God. Okay, whatever the case is, we said that the Mizbeach is wood. So if the Torah calls it wood, then even though it's coated, we're still going to consider it wood. In other words, normally we would consider it a coated if it wouldn't have been the Shulchan in the Beis Hamikdash, we would have considered it metal. But because the Torah calls it wood, the Eibishter calls it wood. So that's why we're going to consider it wood. And the only way that it would become tummy is if you lift it up. And if it was something that wasn't stationary, which it wasn't stationary, as we said before, from Rabbi Shua ben Levi and Rish Lakish, that they would show it to the people. The Gemara now comments on what we just said. We quoted a pasuk, interesting pasuk. It says, pasuk mizbeach v'siyim b'shulchan. It's problematic. You started off saying hamizbeach eitz, and you finished off saying, this is the table that's before Hashem. It's not a table, it's a mizbeach. Mizbeach is an altar. A shulchan is a table. And the pasuk is talking about, starts off with one thing and finishes off with, it doesn't match. So the answer to this is Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, the Amri Tarvayo. Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish explain this. During the time of the Beis Hamikdash, if someone wanted atonement, he brought a sacrifice. The Mizbeach, the altar, atoned for the person. And Achshav, nowadays, Shulchan Shalad Mechaper Alav, a person's table atones for him. Yeah, Pshat over here means Hachnasas Archim, Rashi says. If a person brings in guests, so that's like the same thing as bringing a sacrifice, and that's his atonement. Taisus has another Pshat. Taisus talks about the camaraderie. Yeah, very interesting.
Maybe you'll say that at the same time.
Gadol kayach halagima.
You'll say
Lagima means to drink together. Like to verbringen.
who's together.
Where,
Yes.
no, but if you have yeah, it could be, yeah, I guess it's guessed anyway. It's all guessed. Okay. Okay. Kol hakelim, maybe it's just the family. Kol hakelim shebamikdash yesh lehem shniyim chulu. The Mishnah said that all the utensils, they had replacements in the base of Mikdash. In case something became tamid, they had another one and a third one. It's just extra. And then the Mishnah went on and it said all the vessels in the base of Mikdash required immersion in the mikveh, except for two, except for the Mizbeach Hazav and the Mizbeach Hanachoshes, the inner altar and the outer altar, because they are like the ground. You know how it was? They had the outer altar was filled with dirt. At least in the tabernacle, they had it was sort of like a frame that they settled down and then they filled it up with dirt. It was hollow, and so it was wood covered in gold, covered in copper, actually, wood covered in copper. And then they filled it up with dirt, and so the top would have been just dirt, but it would have been raised. You know, when they would take it away, they would, I guess, lift it up and lift it off the dirt, and then they would move it together with when they would travel.
What happened to the dirt underneath it?
It's probably the wind would just, I don't know. No. Gemara says like this: Mizbeach Hanachoshes, the copper Mizbeach, the Ksiv Mizbach Adama, Mizbeach Adama Tasli. Pasuk says, make an altar out of dirt, out of ground. Mizbeach Hazav, the golden altar, the Ksiv HaMenorah v'HaMizbechais, the menorah and the mizbechais. It talks about the mizbechais, one word but the plural. Mizbeachs. Well, iskish mizbechais elazeh, because the pasuk compares them one to another by using one word, one plural, mizbeach, mizbechais. So that means that they're compared, that they're both considered the ground. And that's why they don't become tummy. The ground doesn't become tummy. The Chacham say Chacham say because they're covered. Rabbi Eliezer, his opinion was, why is it pure? Because it's considered the ground. Chacham say, you know why it's pure? Because it's covered. It's coated. It contradicts what we said before. We said that if it's coated, that's problematic. Right? It goes against what we said before. The Gemara says, Adarabba. That's on the contrary, that's problematic. If they're coated, that's a reason to make them tameh, not to make them tar. They're coated. If it would have been straight, panels of wood, it's tar. It's not even a receptacle, maybe yes, maybe because you put it on there. It would have been tar, but the fact that you coated it, that becomes a problem. That makes it tameh. Ema, the Gemara adjusts the Mishnah. It amends the Mishnah. It says, Ema v'chachamim mitamim mipnei shem mitzufim. The chachamim don't say it's tar because it's coated. The chachamim say that it's tameh because it's coated. They're arguing. Rabbi Eliezer said that these two things are tar, these two altars. And the chachamim say no, they're tameh. Why? Because they're coated. Viba yasema. If you want, you can say another pshat. Rabbanan l'Rabbi Lezer ka'amri. The Rabbanan are actually telling Rabbi Lezer, it's like a conversation here. It says, "My daitach mishum de mitzufim." They're telling Rabbi Lezer like this: why do you need to tell me that the reason why it's tar, why it's pure, is because it's considered the ground? Adama, it's considered the ground. Because if not for the fact that the Torah calls it the ground, you would have said that it's coated, and therefore it's tameh. To negate the fact that it's coated in tameh, the Torah calls it that it's the ground and it's tar. The Chachamim say, no, miftal batal tzipuyin gabayo. The Torah calls it eitz. The Torah calls it wood. And even though it's coated, like the Gemara before, when we were talking about the shulchan, now we're talking about the mizbeach. When we're talking about the shulchan, We called it wood, and even though it was coated, we said that it would have been, even though it's coated, it's still considered wood. Well, guess what? The coating on the mizbeach is also not counted, and it's considered wood. So why do you have to tell me, the Chacham arguing with Rabbi Eliezer, why do you have to tell me that it's tar because it's the ground? It's tar anyway. Not because of the ground, because it's wood. And wood is tar unless it's a receptacle. Or it's something that's moved. Okay. The interesting thing with this pshat and the way the Gemara is learning it is that you're missing that in the conversation. The Chachamim in the conversation just say, because it's covered. No, according to this, the Chachamim are asking Rabbi Eliezer, you think that because it's covered, you have to tell me that? It's actually not considered covered. It's not considered coated. The main part of the conversation is missing. That's the problem with this. Okay. Amar Bavo, Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Bavo says in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, Talmid Chachamim, Ein Or Shel Gehenim Sheiletes Bim. The fire of Gehenim doesn't rule over Talmid Chachamim. Kal v'chaimer misalamandra. It's a kal v'chaimer from a salamander. Salamander, according to this, it's an animal that's comes out of a fire. If you burn a fire for 7 years, constant fire, always adding fuel to the fire.
Try this.
When you're done, out comes a salamander.
I'll let you know 7 years. Yeah, how much into your fire are you? 6 years, 4 years?
Now, remember this guy, this scientist, I forget who it was, but when they believed in spontaneous generation, which they did years ago, the scientists believed in that, then they disproved it. But he made a recipe to how to get a rat. It says you take a barrel, you put some wheat kernels on the bottom, you put in an old shirt, and you leave it for like a certain amount of weeks, and it's going to turn into a rat. Yeah, one of the great scientists, the Royal Society, like the fancy people.
This is why Daf Yomi is on a 7-year cycle.
Yeah. So anyway, regarding these things, the Rebbe says that just because science doesn't find it, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. That's the scientific method would have to be that they find it, not that they don't find it. If they don't find it means maybe they're missing one of the factors. Okay. So Umas Salamandra told us Aishi, just like a salamandra, the salamander, it's born from the fire. Hasach midama einar sheletes by. If someone puts on the blood of the salamander on his skin, I should tell this to the firefighters, the fire doesn't affect them. So Talmid Chacham shekol gufanesh, the Talmid Chacham that their whole body is fire. So for sure, the fire of Gehenna won't affect the Talmid Chacham. Amrei Shlakish says, Einar shel Gehenim sheiletes b'poisha Yisrael, kal v'chaimer mizbeach hazav. Shlakish says that the fire of the Gehenim doesn't rule over even the sinners of Israel, not just Talmid Chacham, even the sinners. It's a kal v'chaimer from the golden altar. Ma mizbeach hazav she'ein olav ela ka'ivi dinar zav. Just like the golden altar, it only has on it a thin layer of gold. How thick is that layer? It's the thickness of a coin. That's it. And kama shanim, over many years, einar sheletes by. The fire doesn't burn the wood that's underneath. There's always a fire. There's not always, but there's a fire on it every day. Half the incense in the morning and half in the afternoon. Remember, and nevertheless, the wood doesn't burn. Why? Because it's covered in metal. It's covered. That thickness is just the thickness of a coin, and nevertheless, it protects it. So, Peishi Yisrael, the sinners of Israel, Shemalein mitzvahs karimein, that are filled with mitzvahs, like a pomegranate, as it says that your temple, rakasich is the temple, like the temple, not temple as in a shul, but your temple is like the blossom of a pomegranate. This is in Shir Shirim. And the Gemara learns, Al tikra rakasich ela rikanim shabach. Don't read it as temples, read it as those that are empty. So if that's the case, that they're filled with mitzvahs, so then the outside, what's the outside? The outside over here means the sins that are on the outside. But on the inside, they're filled with mitzvahs. So for sure, the fire won't affect them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll leave them to do the celebration this evening.
I don't remember that. I want to ask this yesterday, but if you're not allowed to go upstairs,
Well, Mazel Tov on finishing.
Mazel tov.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. All of us.
Okay.
Mazel tov.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give the Rebbe.
I'm gonna say just something from the Rebbe. The Rebbe learns this Gemara. We just learned the Gemara according to Rashi. The Rambam has a different shot than this, and the Rebbe learns according to the Rambam that when the Chachamim say that because it's covered, it should become. If it's covered, it should. The way we learned it is that the Chacham are saying that if it's covered, it should become tamei. But don't worry about that because it's not even counted being as covered because it's called eitz, so it's not even counted. But if it would be covered, it would be tamei. The Rambam doesn't learn like this. The Rambam learns that anything that's covered is not tamei. All covered kelim are not tamei. It says because the covering is batel to the keli. And what are you using here? You're using the covering. So you don't have the keli because that's not what you're using. That's not the vessel. The vessel is the covering. But the covering is batel because it's batel to the keli that's under it. So anyway, so the Rebbe explains this, that the conversation between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim is really based on a machlekes Beisil and Beishamai. It's a very interesting point the Rebbe makes, is that the machlekes Beisil and Beishamai, the Rebbe describes this in different ways, but in this hadron on Masechtas Chagigah, he chooses to learn it like this, that Beishamai looks at everything. Beishamai looks at everything at first glance. How do you describe something before analyzing it? The way it appears right when you look at it, that's what it is. The first example was, Beishamai says that the blessing on the fire that you make after Shabbos is Bayrei Ma'ar Eish, who creates the light of the fire. And Beisil says Bayrei Ma'ar creates the lights of the fire. Why? Because Beisil says that if you analyze the fire, you'll see that there's a lot of light and a lot of different shades of light, not just one. Beishamai says, no, you only look at it as it is at first. The description of everything is as it is at first glance. That's the analyzation doesn't change what it really is. Those are details in it. But what it is just that first glance. So it goes through a bunch of other examples. Goes to Kalanova Chasuda. Beishamai says that you have to praise the Kala as she is. You're not allowed to say anything different than the way. Beisil says no. You praise the Kala, the bride. You say Kalanova Chasuda. She's beautiful and she's kind. Beishamai says, but that's a lie. And Beisil says, no, if someone buys something, you tell them that you had a bad purchase. No. So the way that this is understood, the way the Rebbe puts it, is that at first glance, you don't see that she's beautiful. That's Beishamai's approach to everything. But Beisil says that's not true. What it really is after you analyze it, that's what it really is. It's when you get to the essence, that's through the details, not through that first glance. The first glance is just the external, according to Beisil. Beis Shammai says no. First glance gives you everything, and the details are just details within that. Over here, when you have a coating over something, some machlekes, mesachtes kelim, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, if something is coated, Beis Shammai says it's always tummy. The reason why it's always tummy is because a coating is used for the person to protect whatever's underneath. And Beis Hillel says it actually depends on what type of coating. There are two types of coatings. There's one type of coating that's made to look nice. It's decorative. That's not for the person. That's decorative for the object. Then there's another type of coating that's used to protect, and that's what the person uses. So over here, Rabbi Eliezer is a student of Beis Shammai. So Rabbi Eliezer would say that if it's coated, it's automatically tummy. And Beis Hillel says no. If it's coated, then it would be tar. Yeah.
Just want to tell you about salamander.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
The
boy.
rest of the story,
No, there's no rest.
the reason people thought salamanders came out fire was because salamanders would live inside wet logs.
Oh,
So they throw a wet log in, logs start to get on fire. So I'm getting the wood out of here. And therefore, see salamanders coming out of the fire. That was the
Wow.
origin of salamanders.
wow.
I thought so. So now you know.
Rest story. So you
Uh-huh.
Harvey.
Okay. So
Keep going now.
this explains the beginning. This explains the beginning of Masechtas Chagigah, where Beis Shammai said that the korban that's most important is the one that goes to Hashem, and that should be the one that's more expensive. Eilas Riyah, the burnt offering. And Beis Hillel says no. The korban that's most expensive, that's tuma, is the one that we eat. Is the Shalmei Chagigah. That's the one that's more expensive. So at first glance, it looks like if you're giving the whole thing to Hashem, that's the best. But if you analyze it, it turns out that when the Kayanim eat and when the people eat, that's also considered that it's for Hashem. So after the analyzation, it turns out that this is also that this is really better. That's Beis Hillel's approach. Okay, with this, the Rebbe explains the last piece of the Masechta. Why do we start talking about Pesha Yisrael and Talmid Chachamim? We talk about the coating on the Mizbeach. How'd this come in over here? So it turns out that the way that we're supposed to look at people is not to look at as they are on the outside. On the outside, first glance, you look at them, this guy is, I don't know what. You have to analyze. And after you analyze, you look inside, you see that inside every Jewish person is full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. And that's the approach of Beis Hillel. And that's how this whole Masechta connects. That's the Rebbe's perspective. Okay. Mazel tov, everyone.
Yeshakaya.
Good.
Yeah.
We're ready for tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a good flight, a safe
Okay, have a
flight.
good, for Gesundheit.
Yeah. What time tonight? Is it 7:00?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we have to
Try
post
to
it.
send out the flyer. They send it out to you specifically, Dr. Stein.
We'll post it on the chat.
Will it be on Zoom?
7:15 p.m.
I'm not going to
8
be there, and it's going to be in Shaarei Field. It's not our personal CM. It's the whole North Miami Beach group.
We're
you know.
joining Actus.
We're joining the. It's in
Yeah,
Shaarei
but
Field.
it's gonna be. It won't be on Zoom, huh?
Can you
I'll ask.
arrange?
I'll ask, yeah.
Ask for it to go on Zoom, and then okay, and then send the link.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Good
Sir,
day.
Look,
Everyone's
Okay.
invited, of course, to the CM.
look at your
Shaarei
flyer.
Field.
Sir. Look
Okay.
at your flyer.
Attendance is
Okay,
mandatory.
Hatzlacha.
Look at your
Okay.
flyer.
So
I
brings
sent
me,
you yesterday at
there's
7:48
no
a.m.
learning about the fact that you can't touch these, the Mizbeach, can't touch the